What is going on, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global here, back with another video, and in this one I want to backtrack a little bit from all of the draft stuff that we've been doing. So much more is to come. The draft hasn't even happened yet. Post-draft we're going to be making videos, and we haven't really been talking much about free agency, which of course is understandable. But I did make, I believe, one or two videos where I graded the Patriots free agency signings, but now I want to go from my favorite to my least favorite signings that the Patriots have made, at least so far this offseason. This will give you guys some perspective on how I view these signings, who was my favorite, and who I was kind of not so crazy about them signing. Before we hop into this one, though, make sure you guys slap a huge like on this video. It helps me in these videos out tremendously with all, the time it makes to put all of these together. And, of course, subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots news if you have not already. So straight off the bat, my first one here is going to be linebacker slash edge rusher in Matt Judon. Now, Matt Judon was a surprise addition on the first day of the legal tampering period. I honestly didn't have Matthew Judon as a name to watch. I didn't see it coming when I heard that they were getting a deal done with him. And then they ended up signing him to a 4-year deal, a guy who was in the Pro Bowl the last 2 years. So you're getting a guy who's going to come in and be a difference maker. And they really need that on defense. This defense did take a pretty big step back this past season compared to where it was in 2019. And if the Patriots can get any closer to making this defense like it was in 2019, then this team is going to continue to be more competitive, and that will actually help the offense also, because then the offense doesn't have to compete as much with putting points up on the board. Now, do we want the offense to be able to compete? For sure, but let's take as much pressure off of them as we possibly can, and that's really what this addition of Matt Judon does. Now, the Patriots also did take a step back in being able to apply pressure to the quarterback. They were ranked one of the last in the league, and they were also one of the worst in the league at actually resulting in sacks, which again is very different from what we saw from the 2019 season. Matthew Judon will help add a very physical and a veteran aspect to the Patriots defense. He is also just 28. He played with a tremendous defense that the Baltimore Ravens have had, and he has 34.5 sacks since being selected in the 5th round just back in 2016. He's an every down defensive player, so whether it's stopping the run, rushing the passer on first, second, or third down, you should expect to see a lot of Matthew Judon. Now, my next one on this list is going to be tight end Jonnu Smith. Now, this was their first overall signing. This was the first rumor that they had on the first day of the legal tampering period, so it definitely looks like they have a lot of things in store for Jonnu Smith. And he was a guy that was heavily linked back to the Patriots all offseason, even before free agency and the legal tampering period signed, and they gave him a 4-year deal, $50 million. That includes $31.25 million fully guaranteed. I think it was also pretty evident on how Belichick thought of Jonnu Smith, because he signed Jonnu Smith before Hunter Henry and signed Jonnu Smith to a longer-term deal than Hunter Henry also. It was definitely hard to go back and forth between Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, which one I liked more. But overall, getting a guy like Jonnu Smith at just a very young age who they can lock up, he's going to be a guy that helps the Patriots out tremendously everywhere on the offense because he's so versatile. And that's something that I think he has over Hunter Henry. He can play H-back. He can play at tight end. He's a good blocker. He can go out as a receiving threat. He can play on the outside. He can play on the inside. He can do so many things, and it wouldn't shock me to see him get some snaps at H-back from time to time just as a mismatch. Now, both Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are red zone threats, but I would say definitely Jonnu Smith. He's really, really good at getting separation, especially because of how quick he is. I think that's kind of what separates Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, is that Jonnu Smith, I would say, is a faster version, while Hunter Henry is more of a contested catch guy. And what Jonnu Smith can do after the catch, I think, is going to be pretty spectacular. You might see bigger plays down the field or in the middle of the field from a Hunter Henry because of his contested catch ability. Not saying Jonnu Smith doesn't have that, but Jonnu Smith is a guy that can turn a 10-yard, pass pickup to easily a 25-yard pickup play because of how special he is when it comes to after the catch. And I just think that he has so much untapped potential that he could really flourish with the New England Patriots. He wasn't really given too much opportunities as a pass catcher with the Tennessee Titans. Now, you might think this one right here is going to be Hunter Henry. You were close, but sadly you're wrong. This is going to be wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. And I think that this is going to be a very, very unvalued signing. But now with Julian Edelman being retired, it proves the point even further that Kendrick Bourne is going to be a very, very important piece for the New England Patriots. This is a guy that they have loved ever since he entered the league. I know that they looked into him this past year before the 49ers picked him up again as a restricted free agent, but I know the Patriots also tried to trade for him a couple times. So Kendrick Bourne is a guy that they've wanted to get several times. They essentially just were not able to. Really good in his cone drill when he was originally entering the league. He is going to be a guy like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, Chris Hogan, that type of guy. He's quick. He's not fast, but he's quick. And I think the difference between quick and fast is your ability to get down to the field, kind of being a deep field threat, maybe like a Nelson Aguilar, like a Henry Ruggs, like a Tyreek Hill. But being quick is elusive, and your sharp cuts and how quick you can get around within your cuts and your route tree. And that is exactly what Kendrick Bourne is going to bring. He's super spectacular within that 10 to 15 yard range. They signed him to a 4-year deal, so they're getting him locked up. They get the guy that they wanted for a very long time, locked up for 4 years. He's someone that, if this goes well, I could definitely see staying much longer than that. We're just going to see how it goes, though. Don't want to get too ahead of myself, but being just 26 years old, so much more time to develop. He was with the 49ers, a really great team. The system is fairly the same, so coming into New England, it shouldn't be too much of a change. And he already said how this system that the Patriots are in is actually easier for him than the 49ers was. And I think that he's going to get more opportunities with the Patriots than he did while he was with the 49ers. I also want to say that he is the type of guy that off the field you're just going to love. Julian Edelman was the type of guy off the field we just loved, and it's going to really, really hurt not having that, but I think Kendrick Bourne is going to help mask that just a little bit. Guy's a YouTube channel, always posting, just a very big social media guy. Literally have not seen him take any Patriots gear off since he signed with the New England Patriots. So it's just super cool to see how hype he is just to join the team. And I think that it is going to help significantly in the Patriots trying to have more of a passing attack in 2021. So now is where Hunter Henry does come in. The last 3 picks between Jonnu Smith, Kendrick Bourne, and Hunter Henry were all very tight windows. Kind of had a hard time trying to place all of them and which guy should be placed over the other. I do like Hunter Henry, do not get me wrong, but what kind of pushed him down was more so the injury-prone ability. That's kind of what set him back just a little bit for me. But I really, really loved the addition of Hunter Henry, but I was also very, very surprised. I think that's kind of a valid feeling, and I think that's a feeling that went around most at Pats Nation, especially after we signed Jonnu Smith to a 4-year deal. Now, like I said, they signed Jonnu Smith to a longer-term deal, which means that Hunter Henry was signed to just a 3-year deal, which, again, still kind of surprising. I think that kind of goes to show where Belichick kind of values and just essentially where he wanted to go with this offense within the next few years. Could he always get re-signed for sure? We'll just have to see. But I'm a huge fan of the 2 tight end set, and I don't see how we're not going to get that. This is something Belichick loves to do when he gets the opportunity, but Belichick has not really had the opportunity to have a 2 tight end set. But besides Gronk and Hernandez, which he got lucky drafting 2 elite tight ends, and then things, of course, went downhill with that. Then you had a Gronk and Ben Watson, I believe it was at one time. And then a Gronk and a Martellus Bennett, but that was the year that Gronk also got injured. So I think Belichick really does value 2 tight end sets and something that he really would like to do, but unfortunately hasn't panned out for him because we just haven't had the money to pick up 2 tight ends. And really the league hasn't been at a point where there's been as good of a free agency pool as it was this past offseason, or this offseason, I guess you should say, where there have been 2 top 10 tight ends in this league, and the Patriots were top 3 in cap and were able to pick both of these guys up. Hunter Henry is a great player, an established player also. Belichick has always followed his career, even from high school. He's going to help the Patriots out in the middle of the seam, helping more of that Gronk role. I see him taking more on of that Gronk role than a Jonnu Smith, because I think Jonnu Smith and Gronk are two different types of players. Hunter Henry is going to be a contested catch guy, strong hands guy, but like I said, he is compared to Gronk also because he will deal with some injuries, and I'd be very surprised if he ends up playing a full season. Now, next up here is actually a re-sign in the Patriots made, and that is in center David Andrews. This was a just tremendous, spectacular signing by the Pats, and the value they got was just unbelievable. I think we all thought David Andrews was as good as gone once the Patriots signed Ted Karras to a one-year, $4 million deal. And then out of the blue, we see that David Andrews is coming back to the Patriots on a 4-year deal. It looked like he was possibly heading to Miami, possibly heading to the Packers, but I think all along David Andrews knew that he was going to stay with the Patriots, just wanted to get as much as he could potentially out of them, of course, because he does have a family he has to look out for now also. A captain of this team, a guy who's been around for a very, very long time. Really, the Patriots couldn't get any better at the position than David Andrews, especially at this time. And he has been just a leader on this offensive line. We saw what it was like the year that he was out, and I believe in 2019 when, Ted Karras had to replace him. It was just wonky. The offensive line was just not there. They missed David Andrews. Andrews came back, and, you definitely could see that offensive line was starting to get back to what it used to be. The leader mentality is going to be super important for the 2021 season with all of these new guys coming in, with, of course, Joe Thuney being gone and now having Onwenu switching in at probably the left guard position, but now also having Julian Edelman out, which was a big leader both on and off the field for the offense. It's also going to be very important because you want a very smart guy under center, not just because of his connection with the quarterback under center, but because he helps the quarterback, in this case likely Cam Newton, in really picking apart a defense and letting him know what he sees and being able to switch up the cadence for how the defense is being shown to the center. So all in all, really, really liked that move here. So the next one that I have coming up is linebacker Kyle Van Noy. Unfortunately, this isn't technically a re-signing, because he did go with Miami for about a year. Unexpectedly, I should say, maybe surprised when he was cut by the Miami Dolphins, but of course, good for us Pats fans, don't have to go against him, and we do get him back. They signed him to a 2-year deal that pays him up to $13.2 million. I was scared that this was just going to be a 1-year rental. I'm super, super happy that that's not the case, and hopefully he can stay around for longer than 2 years. Had a pretty good season with the Dolphins this past year. I wouldn't say it was as good as it was with the Patriots, but he wasn't worth the money that I think the Dolphins thought he was, which essentially led to why he was getting cut. I think for some reason, Brian Flores thought that he could get something out of him that the Patriots didn't. That wasn't the case. They needed money, so they cut Kyle Van Noy, and the Patriots bring him back. The Patriots need Kyle Van Noy. They need help with the linebacker position. Kyle Van Noy, over the last few years since joining the team, I believe back in 2016 via a trade with the Detroit Lions, has been a staple to this defense. Whether it is setting the edge, applying pressure, or even in coverage, he is a very good all-around, every down linebacker that the Patriots desperately, desperately missed in 2020. He will come in back to the Patriots defense and help revamp a very depleted linebacker core. And again, he's going to be a guy that gets plugged in, is your day one starter, and is going to be an every down linebacker. He's going to help the Patriots out tremendously at setting the edge, getting pressure on the quarterback once again, actually resulting in sacks, but also finally having a linebacker that you can rely more on in coverage. Now you don't have to rely on a Jawan Bentley going in coverage time after time. All in all, you're getting a guy who knows the system, easily fan favorite. It's just a great signing. Now, next up here is defensive back Jalen Mills. He originally played for the Eagles, so the Patriots have faced him a few times. They signed him to a 4-year deal. The Patriots have done a lot of those signings, which I'm a big, big fan of, building both now and for the future. So really, really like that they signed him to a 4-year deal. He's super, super versatile, so it's going to bring question marks. Where exactly is he going to play? He plays at corner. He plays at safety. This past year was mainly safety. And I do believe he played a little bit better at safety than he did corner, but it's going to be hard to predict where exactly he's going to play because I'm telling you, he played everywhere this past season, and he's done so several other times. Whether it was playing in the slot, outside, strong safety, free safety, playing on the line of scrimmage, he has played everywhere as a secondary piece. That just screams a Bill Belichick signing to me. He's also a big fan of Bill Belichick and the Patriots way. He raved about that when he signed with them and even talked about when he first met Belichick, how he kind of had like a fan freak out moment. So that's really cool to hear. And he's still a young guy. You know, he's a veteran in the league because he played 5 seasons so far with Philadelphia, but he's only played 5 seasons. So still young and has a lot of time left in him. And if anyone's going to develop him, I think it's going to be Bill Belichick. The Patriots get the best out of defensive backs, whether that is safety or corner. They just know how to develop these guys. And I think that Jalen Mills has the ability to be a really nice secondary piece no matter where he's going to play. Just a very all-around, well-balanced guy who, again, I just think is going to bring that swagger aspect to the Patriots secondary. And with not knowing what's going to happen with J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, Patrick Chung just retired. You have Adrian Phillips, who's in contract year. Devin McCourty is going to be retiring within a year or two. The signing of Jalen Mills, I think some people have question marks right now, but within a couple of years at least, or at most, rather, at a couple years at most, you are going to see why the Patriots brought on Jalen Mills. Now, next up here is going to be offensive tackle Trent Brown. This was actually the first transaction that the Patriots made personnel-wise this offseason, and it was a surprising one at that. They were making the trade, I believe, 5 or 6 in the morning, so, you know, I actually hadn't gone to bed at that point. I was getting ready for bed. I was going to bed at like 5 or 6 in the morning for some reason. And I saw the Patriots traded for him, and I thought that I was just hallucinating, but I think it's a really good piece. He had a down season. I know that he gained a lot of weight since he was last with the Patriots, but I do also know that in his contract that he has now with the Patriots, they do say that he has to get down to a certain weight, so I know that's something that he's currently doing, so I'm not too worried about that. I know that he had some injury issues while with the Raiders the last few seasons. I heard that he was kind of milking that a little bit though, so maybe coming back to the Patriots, it won't be as much of an issue. I do know too that he's super stoked to be with the Patriots. He was posting all about it when, you know, he got traded back to the Patriots, so you always want guys who want to be on the team. You really can never have enough of those guys, and getting a guy like Trent Brown who wants to be here is just tremendous. When he was with the Patriots a couple of years ago, the year we won Super Bowl 53, he was a huge aspect of that offense and a huge aspect of us actually ending up winning that game. He ended up and went to sign a huge contract with the Raiders, which we all kind of expected he was going to leave. And after the great season that he had with the Patriots, it was only inevitable that it was going to happen. I think that this is going to be an upgrade for the Patriots. I think that the offensive line could have used a little bit of an upgrade. Marcus Cannon, who opted out in 2020, he then got traded to the Texans. And Isaiah Wynn's injury history, I don't like that it's just a 1-year deal. That kind of sucks, not going to lie. But hopefully we can get him signed longer term after this year, and hopefully he can stay healthy. If we got him for more than 1 year, for me, it would have been higher up on my list. But when you mix in with just a 1-year deal, he gained weight and some injury history. That's kind of what bumped him down. But I think that this was just a spectacular acquisition by the Patriots and their offensive line. I think it's definitely going to help vamp the offensive line compared to what it was in 2020. Still wasn't bad back then, but I think this will definitely help it because the Patriots did have a lot of shuffling going around that offensive line all year, both in 2019 and 2020. Now, next up on this list is going to be the re-signing of defensive lineman Lawrence Skye. This one was a huge surprise. I did not see Lawrence Skye re-signing with the Patriots, especially, after we heard that he was going to be meeting with the Dolphins. I thought at that point it was just a done deal, especially because they signed Davon Godshaw also. The reason that I have Lawrence Skye above Davon Godshaw is because obviously you're getting a guy back who has been a leader. He's been the staple. He's been their number one guy on their defensive line for the last 4 years when he originally signed with the Patriots to a 4-year contract. Now, they signed him to another 4-year deal, which I was very surprised about. There was another 4-year deal. I think they have some opt-out options if things don't go too well at the end of a year or two, but hopefully he can stay with us for all 4 years and his time with the Patriots and have an 8-year career with New England. But again, you're getting a guy back who knows your system and has just been a staple to your defensive line for so long. Losing a guy like Lawrence Skye would have been really, really tough for the Patriots, especially when you lost Adam Butler and you had issues with your defensive line in 2020. Being a big body in the middle and also his football IQ, whether it is stopping the run or getting a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. He's mainly a run stopper, though. He has showed that he has the tremendous ability to be a number one starter for the Patriots with the interior of our defensive line. And him being a veteran, of course, also helps with that football IQ that I just recently mentioned. I would have been really concerned if the Patriots only had Davon Godshaw coming in and then had departures of both Adam Butler and Lawrence Skye, but I feel a lot better about where this defensive line is going for 2021 now that they have someone like Davon Godshaw and the re-signing of Lawrence Skye. Speaking of Davon Godshaw, he's going to be next on this list. Davon Godshaw was a pretty nice addition by the Patriots. You could say that they valued him a little bit more than some would. They gave him a 2-year deal worth up to $16 million, $9 million fully guaranteed. So, I mean, I personally wouldn't have given him that much, but it definitely goes to show how they personally view him. They've seen Davon Godshaw a lot over the few years as a nose tackle. Again, somewhere where the Patriots do need depth at, so it was a good addition. But I think if Belichick is going to make an addition, then making one with a guy that you have seen several times per season for years is just a classic Bill Belichick move. And Davon Godshaw also is not the only one that Belichick made in that aspect. I do have some concerns about him with consistency and just his ability to stay healthy, which is kind of what has him a little bit lowered. But I do think that he is a good defensive tackle. I do think that he is an upgrade over what we've had. I do think he's a very solid addition, and I think he's really going to help the Patriots out in stopping the run, definitely, but also in applying pressure. Do I think he's going to have like 5 sacks on the season? No, but help apply pressure, help collapse the pocket, but mainly help and stop the run, which is going to be the biggest thing. Again, his contract is very telling on how Bill Belichick views him. He also played in a very, very similar system with Miami than what the Patriots have now. So really the switch shouldn't be too hard for Davon Godshaw. Now next up on my list, the Patriots brought in another wide receiver in wide receiver Nelson Agholor. Now I don't hate this move where there are definitely better guys, 100%. I don't think you can argue with that. But I'm just looking at the contract, and I don't think that anyone can argue that they just paid a little bit more than I think a lot of us would have been comfortable with. But in the end, maybe that's just more telling on how Belichick wanted him and how Belichick views him. Maybe Belichick wanted Nelson Agholor that bad that he was like, look, we have the money. Let's entice him a little bit more to come with us so that we can make sure he doesn't sign with another team. Now, he signed a 2-year deal with the Patriots, so it wasn't one of those 4-year deals like they did with a lot of these other guys, which I think is also slightly telling. But $26 million. That's a pretty significant number. I also believe that in his contract, the Patriots can opt out after the 2021 season if things aren't going well, but of course, let's just hope that things are. Now, with the Philadelphia Eagles, he was a good player, but wasn't anything too spectacular. Then this past year with the Raiders, the man just goes off. And I mean goes off. He put up 896 yards on just 48 catches with a career high of 8 touchdowns. He was what I think the Philadelphia Eagles always hoped he would be. But that's also because the Raiders utilized him, I think, in the way that he always should have been, which is something the Eagles just were not able to do. And that is the fact that they finally used him to his speed. They used him as a downfield threat. And I think if anybody is going, again, to get the best out of Agholor, it's going to be the Patriots. Belichick just knows how to use these guys to their strength, and I'm just hoping that that is going to be the case here with Nelson Agholor. Because I believe if Belichick can use Agholor to his strengths, then we're going to see him more like what he did with the Raiders rather than what he did with the Eagles. All in all, the Patriots did add Nelson Agholor to a place where they needed help and an addition at, and that's a deep threat. They really haven't had a main deep threat. I mean, let's look at what they've had in the past few years. They tried Dorsett, they went with Damiere Byrd, and this time it's going to be Nelson Agholor, who obviously is a better version of both of those guys. Now, Nelson Agholor also led the NFL with 2.8 yards per vertical route in 2020. Obviously, that is going to be much upgraded compared to what the Patriots receiving core had last year when they averaged just 0.9 yards per vertical route. We also know that Cam Newton struggles within the short to intermediate routes when throwing, and that he excels more when it comes to throwing deep balls down the field, so maybe Nelson Agholor could be a match made in heaven with Cam Newton. For me, the concerns just come with which version of Nelson Agholor are we going to get? Are drops going to be an issue? And I think they slightly paid a little bit more than they should have for him. Nonetheless, though, do not get me wrong, I like the addition. Now, next up here is going to be James White. They're just signing him on a one-year deal, but I do still like it. Look, James White was not himself in 2020, and rightfully so, after the death of his father and almost his mother. He gets a pass. If you say he doesn't get a pass, just leave the channel right now. I just think that's super disrespectful. Everything he had to go through, I give him a pass easily, and I don't second guess that. I will say that I was very surprised that White even re-signed with the Patriots. I thought he was going to go to the Bucs, as did many other people. It even said himself, James White thought, I might even be going to the Bucs. He was very interested in going to the Bucs, but decided to stay with the Patriots. It's only a one-year deal, so chances are he's probably going to be out after this. I could see this being a situation where he ends up going somewhere else. He's trying to reset his market. The best place to do that, of course, is with the team you've been with your entire career in the New England Patriots. I think he'll try to get a larger contract next season because I just don't think he was getting the contract offers that he was expecting this offseason. But for the Patriots, you bring in your future James White in this year's draft. You have him learn under James White for a year, kind of sit back, and then have him take over once White leaves. Nonetheless, he does fill a need that the Patriots hadn't had up until that point, and that was a pass-catching running back, and the Patriots finally now have that back. Now, next up here is going to be Henry Anderson, the defensive lineman, formerly who was with the Jets. Now, I would have liked to put him a little bit higher on this list. Unfortunately, that just wasn't how this list ended up going, but I do think he was a good addition. This is another guy that, like I said earlier on with Davon Godshaw, Belichick knows him. He was a former Jet. Belichick had to play him for years, twice a year. And this is just another one of those very low-key additions that I think could be a really good signing by Bill Belichick. I think that Henry Anderson is just your classic Belichick signing. I think that Henry Anderson actually fits the Patriots scheme, system, and just atmosphere really, really well. And this is something that I even heard from fellow Jets fans. He's also a veteran in the league, so he knows what he's doing and he knows what to expect. And I really, really like the idea of adding a veteran to this defensive line. He's a 6-year vet who was released earlier in this month, so the Patriots could have signed him earlier if they did want to, but they didn't. But he ended up being the 4th signing in one day when it came to the defense. They signed Davon Godshaw, Deatrich Wise, Carl Davis, and Matt Judon all in one day. Now, Anderson had a total of 7 sacks all the way back in 2018, but had not seen any more production like that ever since. He's someone who will definitely be moved around all over the defensive line for the Patriots, whether it's in the interior of the defensive line or the edge. He can play everywhere, and I think the Patriots are really going to use him both to his size and his lengths and really try to create mismatches with Henry Anderson. Anderson is also a guy that last year was one of the best front 7 defenders in stopping the run and his run stopping percentage. So just another guy that's going to come in and really help at the weakest point the Patriots defense had, and one of the worst things that the Patriots team had in general, and that is in stopping the run. Y'all, I'm not going to lie, I totally forgot about Deatrich Wise. I would have put Deatrich Wise definitely higher on this list, but at the same time, it wouldn't have been too much higher. I love Deatrich Wise, but because of just all the talent we brought in, it just pushes him down, sadly. Nonetheless, though, because of where he's ranked, do not get me wrong, I love the addition of Deatrich Wise. I'm beyond happy and thankful that Dietrich Wise is back because of what he brings both on and off the field. He is so underrated as a player when it comes to this Patriots defense and their front seven. A very versatile guy. We see him play in the interior. We see him setting the edge a lot. We see him a lot on the interior, though, which is pretty surprising. I do know that he did try to bulk up a little bit more this offseason to try to play more with the interior, but he has had one of the best pass rush percentages out of any Patriots defender over the last few years. He's someone that is just very underrated when it comes to this fan base. And when the Patriots signed him to a 4-year deal, I think that it was very evident and telling how Belichick sees him. And although maybe the fan base and maybe Dietrich Wise didn't get enough credit as he deserved, Belichick clearly saw that. And one of the big things with re-signing Dietrich Wise is that he said, I want to be used more. Because obviously he was used as a rotational piece, wasn't really used too much, and Belichick said, okay, we'll use you more. So I'm hoping we see more of Dietrich Wise. You know, he came in his rookie year and put up really good numbers, kind of took more of a slope down, but at the same time, wasn't really getting as much playing time as that current time did in his rookie year. So hopefully we see more of Dietrich Wise, but a guy who knows the system, knows what he's doing, still very young, and again, still very productive despite what the stats might say. Now, next up here, the Patriots signed Justin Bethel to a 2-year deal. I really like this move for the team. Also, obviously, this isn't really much of a defensive piece. This is just more of special teams, but nonetheless, it's a very good move. A Pro Bowler that the Patriots are re-signing. You don't know what's going to happen with Matthew Slater, so getting some reinsurance to him is very good, and he's been very productive, you know, both in and outside of the Patriots. And they actually signed him to a 3-year deal. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. $6 million, really not much of anything, especially for the ace you're getting in Justin Bethel. So another really good move, but obviously, due to it just being special teams, it's not going to be as high as some of these other positional values. Speaking of special teams, the Patriots also did sign Cody Davis. I really think that this was another good and pretty expected signing in my own personal opinion. Cody Davis just performed exceptionally well with the Patriots. I think he ranked second in special teams tackles this past season. Not to mention he also had a blocked field goal. A veteran in this league, he also brings some secondary help at safety, as where Justin Bethel brings some corner. Don't expect to see them there. Nonetheless, though, you are going to get depth there, but you're getting two very good special teamers. Belichick values special teams, doesn't really cost much, so, you know, why not? Next up, the Patriots tendered fullback Jakob Johnson. I do like this move for the team. I mean, obviously, it's not too standoutish in the factor of it's just a fullback. The Patriots do still heavily use a fullback, though, so it is important despite how other teams may or may not use their fullback. There is going to be question marks on who is going to get that fullback position, though. There could be a fullback battle in camp. I can't say yet again. We expected there to be one in 2020, but that didn't happen. So in 2021, I expect that between Jakob Johnson, Danny Vitale, and potentially Dalton Keene. So it's going to be really interesting to see, but not necessarily as high valued as it could have been if, you know, he was their number one go-to guy. Now, next up here is going to be Nick Folk. This could be higher on the list for sure. And you could even argue that it could be put above Jakob Johnson, but I know that this was kind of the Patriots' wait-and-see approach. You know, they do want to go a better route than Nick Folk. They want to find the future. They don't want to have to continue to go to him every single year, but right now he was the best option for the Patriots, and he had a really good season in 2020. The question is, can he capitalize on that? The thing about Nick Folk is that every time he has a good year, he's not able to capitalize on that good year. So there's just a lot of questions on can the Patriots get that same version of him from 2020 in 2021. Nonetheless, though, a really good addition. Obviously, the Patriots weren't going to be able to get much better. Now, next up here, I have center Ted Karras. Now, this one easily would have been higher on the list, easily, if David Andrews was not re-signed. And I do believe Belichick didn't expect David Andrews to be re-signed. But nonetheless, we now have Ted Karras back on the roster on a 1-year, $4 million deal. And he's obviously not going to be a starter, so that kind of puts us in a tough position where we just paid $4 million to a 1-year backup. And yes, it is always good to have an insurance policy at center and guard, which is where Ted Karras plays. Don't get me wrong, and chances are we're going to see him at some point this upcoming season. But $4 million for a backup, not your starting piece, obviously not an ideal situation for the Patriots. They definitely could have gotten somebody for less money. Maybe they could have even gotten Ted Karras for less. I don't know, but nonetheless, having a guy who is not your starter for that much money on a one-year deal, not exactly ideal. Now, next up comes to some of these little signings. The Patriots signed linebacker Rayquan McClain. I do like this signing. I don't think it's a bad signing. It's a depth signing. One of those let's see what he brings type of signings, kind of like a Shalik Calhoun a few years ago, who was able to make the roster and stayed for a couple of seasons. I like Rayquan McClain. He has the potential to actually be someone. The Patriots have experience playing him both in his time with the Dolphins and this past year with the Raiders. He's definitely not a starter. He's going to be a rotational piece. He's a hard-hitting inside linebacker who I've always said this since they've signed him. I think he would be utilized the same way as in a Landon Roberts. He'd be used as a, stop the run, shoot the gap type of linebacker, but you don't want him in coverage at all. And while you can set him on the edge, he's not really great there. I would say he's probably better than Landon Roberts, but he's definitely not going to be anything too special. He brings special teams ability also, which is probably what's going to get him onto the team if he does. But again, the best comparison I can make is a Landon Roberts. That's just what I see in Rayquan McClain. But next up here is going to be defensive lineman Montravius Adams. Not too much to say about him. Really, it's just some interior defensive lineman depth. He had some really good ability in college, but since coming into the league as a third-round pick, just has not been able to live up to that. Good potential value. I don't see him making the roster, but as a camp body, well, we'll see what he's got. And lastly here, Leroy Reynolds. The Patriots signed a 31-year-old special teamer. It's always good to see what these guys can bring. He's probably just a camp body also, but 31 years old, has been with several different teams, whether it was the Bengals, the Falcons, so he's going to bring depth as a special teamer. As Belichick always says, you can never have enough special teamers. Will, of course, also bring some depth at linebacker, but just one of those guys where if he makes a team, it's only as a special teamer. So guys, I know that this video was long. I wasn't expecting it to be this long, but unfortunately, or I guess fortunately you could say, the Patriots just had a very, very, very long list of offseason additions so far, so this video was going to be a little bit longer than most. Before we do end this one off, though, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsors of this video, betonline.ag. Guys, if you don't know betonline.ag, they have the fastest and easiest ways to bet on all of your sports action. Football might be over, but NBA, college basketball, and the NHL are a full swing. BetOnline even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV, along with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything that you can imagine. BetOnline also has you covered for all of the news, scores, and odds, and it is the best way to place your bets, and it's completely free to sign up. All you guys got to do is head over to the website or use your mobile device today to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. This is BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in with the action, and don't forget to use that promo code CLNS50 for a 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Guys, like always, I appreciate you for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to leave a big like on this video. Subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots news. I appreciate you guys for watching this video, especially if you got all the way through. If you did get all the way through, drop a GOAT symbol or just say GOAT so I know that you're a real one. Like always, I appreciate you for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Go Pats.